Hello, welcome to another product presentation. Today we've got Ryan Harlin from the Propellerheads, who's normally on the other side of the camera. In fact, Ryan is the guy who did the Music Making Month, right?
That is when I sort of put on my my Nick Bat hat and did my best imitation to sort of host live streaming events.
That was actually great. I mean, it must have been a lot of work, but I learned some great stuff there. Lucky Date, DJ Lucky Date was awesome. That was a great session.
Yeah, I mean, I was amazed. We did, you know, the concept when we came up with it was, hey, let's just do this thing where we sort of do a live streaming event every night, maybe more if we can do more in a day. And we hooked up with musicians all around the world, and it worked. It was sort of this crazy thing where we sort of flicked the switch the first time and it came on. We thought, oh my God, it's actually, you know, at one point we were doing a SoundCloud event. We had someone in France and someone in San Francisco, and I was in Sweden, and it was sort of like, oh my God, technology.
Full on multinational.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, today you're here to show us some of the things that Reason 7's got to offer, because obviously Reason 7's just recently come out, but it's actually been quite a long period of kind of forward momentum for Propellers, the Reason with the rack extensions and what have you.
Sure, yeah, this ain't your old Reason, that's for sure. I mean, we've, you know, from going from Reason 5 to Reason 6, or 6.5 to 7, you know, we've got some people that are upgrading now from Reason 4 and 5, and they're just, their minds are blowing because they're getting, you know, rack extensions, which just takes what was a finite set of tools that we've been building up in Reason for years, and just explodes it now into, you know, dozens, you know, I don't know what it is, north of 100 and some tools. And then we've got audio recording, we've got the time stretch, we've got, you know, the big mixer. So for people that were previous Reason users and have sort of, you know, they were comfortable with what they had, they liked their set of tools, and are now upgrading to Reason 7, it's, you know, it's all of that plus so much more.
So let's just fire it up and take a look at some of those things. One of the things I looked at was Spectrum EQ, which is kind of new just for the mixer section, okay? And that gives us what?
So basically, what we've got now, let's, I'll solo our acoustic guitars. What we've got now is this Spectrum EQ window, which, let me set up a loop.
It's very David Bowie. Ground. Oh no, not.
Oh, there we go.
Nearly.
So what we've got, you know, I'll pause while we're talking here. We've got the Spectrum EQ window. It is directly integrated into the EQ that's on the big mixer, and that, you know, we've got this mixer that we've got modeled EQ and channel dynamics from the SSL 9000K. And so what we figured is, okay, we want to give people this visual way to EQ, but we're going to integrate it with this with the EQ that's already there. So basically, if you let's select our acoustic, we turn on the EQ, we've got, you know, our EQ controls. And I don't know if you can see, where's it happening here? Here it is. As I turn the handle in the channel EQ, I'm actually adjusting the EQ that's in the mixer, and vice versa. So if I actually...
And we can see the usual big bass spike that you get from a mighty acoustic guitar without any bass roll-off on the mic.
Exactly. It becomes a really quick way to see the trouble spots, to sort of contour things, to make sure that you're fitting the elements in your mix the way they need to sit together.
And can you get that window to follow your actions so that you don't have to keep closing and opening?
Yeah, so I mean, it does live follow. So if I were to select, let me unmute or unsolo the acoustic, we'll go to the kick.
Right.
You know, as I click around channels.
Oh, that's handy.
We're looking, you know, whatever we're doing here is following along with us there.
So anything else we need to look at within the mixer? I think we've got groupings a lot easier, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, well, grouping is something that, you know, this mixer comes from Reason 6. You know, it's a carryover from Reason 6 and recorded before that. And something that wasn't in it was channel grouping. And, you know, because Reason's a modular system, people always had their own ways of doing channel grouping. But what we've done is we've given you just a really simple way to group channels within the mixer, and also in doing that, you know, the basic stuff like, you know, muting the group or soloing the group now all works in a way that it didn't in the more modular cabling versions of the groups. I did this yesterday to come and talk to you. So I recorded acoustic guitar, quadruple tracked an acoustic guitar track with 2 microphones. So I've got these 8 channels.
Yeah.
And what you can see here is that I've basically assigned all of them to this output bus, which I've labeled acoustic. And so now we've got all of our acoustic guitars coming here, and we can adjust our levels, you know, as a group. And yeah, I mean, you know, it's not rocket science, right? But
it's in line. It doesn't do them sort of at the end, so you could be flexible where you want the actual group fader to be.
Absolutely, and then you can obviously get into, you know, you can group groups. So I could take, you know, these acoustic channels, this guitar, and the bass, and I can route them. I use the quick command of Command G, but you can just route them to a new group. And we
so you can bus upon bus upon bus.
Yeah, bus upon bus upon bus.
Does that allow you to do things like bouncing those groups out? So if you want to create stems to the outside world, can you do that kind of thing as well?
Yeah, I mean, Reason's got a pretty handy little bounce mixer channels window, and in it, you've got basically access.
All of it. You just check the ones you want.
You check the ones you want, and included in there is like, here's our acoustic group, and then, you know, there's some other stuff in here which is.
So that's kind of handy, because I mean, Reason is essentially, you know, is a closed system in some degrees, but the way of getting stems out there is going to be pretty easy.
Absolutely, yeah, right. Yeah. No, it's a, you know, you literally just check off what you want. You decide, you know, you go to audio files on disk, and then you can choose to output, you know, all your settings, just the fader section. You can you've got your effects that you can output as well, so you can stem people out just the effects feeds, and it goes out that way. So it's a great way to sort of.
That's handy. The other thing, obviously, with groups, can you then hide or minimize the tracks within that group and just have the group so you can sort of thin down what's going?
Visually collapse things. No, we are still a scrolling based. A
scrolly mixer.
A scrolly mixer. And if you're, you know, you mentioned Lucky Date. You know, he's one of those guys that.
Yeah, his arrangements were just kind of vast, weren't they?
They are vast. I mean, hundreds, literally, of devices and stuff, and he just flies around that thing, and it's organized chaos to him.
So anything else happening in the mix? I did see something about parallel.
Yeah, so we've got parallel channels, which again is another one of those things that through Reason's modular-based way of working has been a thing people have been doing. And parallel, you know, I mean, everyone knows about parallel compression, but parallel compression is actually part of the broader concept of parallel processing, right?
Yeah.
So you've got, you know, this is about as basic as it gets. A loop, a single channel, and there's our sound.
Right.
Okay, well that's nice. We can do things to it. We can compress it, we can EQ it, we can do all sorts of things when we're mixing it. But if we right-click on it and we create a parallel channel, we can now work with, almost like layers in Photoshop, we can work with elements of the sound in a different way. So let's say on the original channel, I mute the parallel. On the original channel, I'm going to add, you know, I'll give it a little bit of extra bass. On the parallel channel, I can do more extreme things, and I can blend it in so that I retain all the qualities of the original channel.
Yeah, I mean, most often you might compress something really hard and then bring it up underneath.
Right. So
I had a question about this before we.
Sure.
When it creates a parallel channel, is it actually doubling the instance? So you've got two instances of Octo.
No. What it's doing is it's tapping a feed off. So if I flip around to the back of the rack, on the mixer channel, there is a. You can see I'll do this. So
it's a pre-fade, pre-EQ, pre.
It's that's right. It's pre-dynamics, pre-EQ, pre-fade, all that stuff, and it's moving it into another.
So it's not like, because normally one would just duplicate, and then you'd end up with double, and you know.
And then you get
okay, so it's actually a DSP efficient way of doing it, right? Okay, gotcha.
We'll just take our drums and we'll do some extreme compression, and let's do some extreme EQ. Let's bring out some of the highs in it, maybe. Okay, but if we bring them both in, you can hear that's our original, and we can just fade in the elements of this one until we have both qualities. And you can add, you know, parallel upon parallel as well. So if I click this one,
so you can parallel a parallel track.
Exactly. Well, what you're parallel, yeah, exactly. So
you're splitting the patch point, I guess.
You're splitting the patch point, but because it's pre-EQ, pre-dynamics, and all that, what I end up with now, if I solo this, is I've still got the original. It's not that I have now that compressed and EQ'd parallel. I've got
You're still coming at the
tapping off the original
effectively
source.
Straight from the tape head, if you like.
If you want to think of it that way, sure.
The really, really big deal is obviously MIDI. I mean, MIDI has been something, it's sort of almost inconceivable that it hasn't been there for so long, but now it is. So, now that it is there, what does it do? How does that work?
You've got there it is, external MIDI instrument.
Right.
Okay, so we've got this new rack device, and it is, it sits in your rack. If you flip around, it's got, CV cables and stuff on the back, which become really pretty important in terms of integrating it within Reason. You've got your MIDI interface, and you just go out to your gear.
So it accesses a MIDI out port, effectively.
It accesses, whatever MIDI, whether that be a controller keyboard with a MIDI jack on it or an audio interface. You just send out your MIDI and hook up your gear, and there you go. You're rolling. And
what's this controller button is like a single assignable
control on the front. Now, if you're sequencing, you can create automation lanes for however many MIDI controller values you want. But we've got one that's assignable here that you can basically set it to whatever MIDI value you want. You can automate that knob, or you can assign that to a controller and control your parameter that way. And what I find really cool about the MIDI instrument being an instrument on the Reason rack, it's got these cables on the back, the CV cables, which sort of is Reason's bread and butter, right? And so you can hook up any of these sort of CV devices that are within the Reason rack, and suddenly, maybe your MIDI gear doesn't have an arpeggiator, but Reason has an arpeggiator. And so you can take the RPGA that's in Reason, wire it up via CV cables, and now you're arpeggiating your MIDI gear.
Or the assignable CC even, yeah.
Or the assignable CC. So you can take the matrix pattern sequencer, and you can draw CV curves, sort of pattern sequencer control curves, and send them out there, and now you're pattern sequencing something that may not have a pattern sequencer built into it.
Can you have more than one MIDI device per track, effectively? So you can have one MIDI device that sends to one port and have multiple ones, so they're being driven off the same MIDI data, effectively?
Yes.
Okay.
You can throw as many, you can do a bunch of different ways. You can throw as many MIDI instruments as you want into a combinator, and you can then route out to multiple MIDI channels. You can route out to multiple devices.
Because that's neater, because in most MIDI sequencers you tend to duplicate tracks and then feed them out, whereas this way you can run multiple devices.
Run all that, and you can also, let's say you've got the one controller knob, you can have two different external MIDI instruments, assign the controller knob to do two different things on each external MIDI instrument, and now you've got two controller knobs on your
okay, that's more flexible than I initially thought it would be, actually, because I mean we can kind of joke about how it's about time, but that's an interesting take on it. Okay.
Yeah. So that's it. 1982 has arrived in the rack.
Excellent. I mean, there are some other aspects too. The other big changes are the time stretch and the slicing, aren't they? Which are kind of a bit more integrated now. But the actual time stretch, that's kind of a biggie because everybody's.
Yeah, the cool thing about time stretch is that when we came out with Record, which predates Reason 6, and we ended up merging. So Reason 6 is basically Record brought into Reason. And
because time stretch was a big deal about that, wasn't it?
It was a big deal about it. And I'm going to toot our own horn. Our time stretch sounds really good. And I don't just say that as, the Propellerhead guy. I say that as a musician who makes his own music and relies on really good time stretch. I'll bring in our little Bowie homage. The first thing that lets us do is audio quantize. And let me go to my acoustic guitars again. The original acoustics that I recorded, I did my best to play in time. I didn't really become that successful. You can hear some of those.
Bit of flamming against each of the tracks. Is that
yeah, that's all. That's all 4 performances. If I take these tracks, let me zoom in.
Right, it's created the anchor points and the
and the thing is that this isn't something where you need to analyze the file. You don't need to generate these anchor points. They're just there. You record the track, double click it, and it's showing you all your transients.
So this adds the transients here, and it's not dependent on the kind of, you don't have to say this is 2 bars exactly long, this is the exact tempo, because that's the thing that I find in some programs. If it's not there and you try and start messing around, you get in a bit of a mess. So
it knows what it needs to know, and it basically just you can just grab your transients, or excuse me, grab your slice markers, quantize them all, and then what you end up getting is. But you can also do things where you can completely rephrase things. So, for example, I'll just play a little bit of I've got a lead guitar part, right? Right? Now, this is just me speaking as a guitarist. I have bad habits. One of my bad habits is when I'm tracking and improvising and stuff, I tend to think very straight on the beat. What you can do is you can just come in here and we can reimagine this phrase. So, for example, let's see what we can do here. Let's make it a triplet feel, right? I can switch my snap mode to eighth note triplets, and I can just drag my markers around. And I can even, I'll pull that in there, and instead of having it come in on the upbeat of the previous measure, I'll switch that to eighth notes and we'll have it come in right on the bar. And so you take...
so you're just changing the snap points. And
taking the snap points, yeah.
Okay,
and so you end up then with a phrase that is, again, because of the stretch algorithm, because it sounds so transparent, you can do this and...
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Sounds like Roger Waters.
Right. I can now take this audio file and I can actually, just like we could bounce mixer channels, I can now bounce this to a Rex loop.
So it'll bounce it at the points that you've modified those anchor points as well. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So those become my slices in my Rex file. So if I switch to that, let's just make it, just for the sake of making it a little smaller. So if I bounce this to a Rex loop, and if you look over here, let me zoom in again for you. It's created this little Rex file that's now sitting in our song. If I double click that,
it just opens a track.
It opens a track. It makes us, let's pull it down here. Where are we? It makes us a Dr. Octarex. And there's our same audio sitting in the Rex loop. So there we've got our audio just, sitting in there. And we can now that it's in a Rex file, we can do all sorts of weird stuff to it.
Synthesize it. And
yeah, we can go into, we've got slice edit mode where we can now start saying, oh, well, let's, let me click on reverse. We can, reverse a couple slices.
Audiomatic was something that was, I was really fascinated by, and this is the kind of make it sound better. It's like Instamatic for, sorry, Instagram for audio, effectively.
That's what people are calling it, and that's not far off the mark. I sort of lump them all into each other and sort of think of it as like the hipster Insta analogification of your audio, right? And so we took that same concept and we created Audiomatic. Maybe the way to show it is to just bring up a drum loop. So let's create an Octarex, and I'll load a hip-hop loop. We've got some signature loops from Hank Shockley from the Bomb Squad in here, so I'll pull...
Actually, that's something you mentioned. There are a whole load more sound library additions to Reason 7,
Every time there's a new iteration of Reason, we expand the factory sound bank. So we've got all the stuff that's already been there, and we just build on top of it. Okay, so we've got this regular beat. Let me just pull the tempo down. Now that's already a vibey kind of...
a classic, I think one might say.
Yeah, it is a classic, right? So we can take this basic drum loop and we can sort of add, some vibe to it, or even more vibe to it, by just dragging in an Audiomatic. So we got this basic one, and then we just got, we're working in certain degrees of, just like Instagram, we're working in certain degrees of subtlety, right? It's not going to like blow out your audio.
No, I heard in the room it dropped. The octave dropped on the bass drum.
You bring in a little more, sub on the bass. There's a lot of stuff going. We're doing a little tape saturation. We're doing a little compression. But the key to this is that it's almost like, again, I'm in the creative mode. I don't want to think like, oh, there's a sort of subsonic processing going on. There's an oral exciter on that. Oh, we've got a 18 dB per octave filter going. It's like no, it's
so this is almost like a wrapper for a lot of other processes. It's almost like a what do they call it? What do you call the wrapper? Is it the
combinator?
The combinator in sort of.
Sort of. I mean, this is all new algorithm. All the DSP that's going on under the hood. It's not just wrappers for stuff that's already in Reason.
Okay,
in a sense, you know, that click of the button when you click on the tape preset, you're doing a series of things to your audio that, you know, what we're sort of saying with the interface is like, in the same way you are with Instagram. It's like, you don't need to worry about what's happening. You need to worry about how it sounds. And
I just want it to be smudgy.
Exactly. Want to be, yeah, right. So you can take this tape preset. We could go with a transistor radio, you know, or we could go to the bottom preset and really bring in a lot of that bass. Or we can sort of, you know, we can really tweak it. But we can also then, you know, with the dry wet control, we can
almost like having a parallel track in there as well,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's effectively it's like a parallel kind of processing thing.
So it's not just for a master bus thing; it could be on an individual track or. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, I did a tutorial which is up on our channel now, which I took Reason Disco School, which is a refill sound library we have of disco loops, and I sort of I created a new band that I'm calling Craft Junk, okay? Which is a new entity unknown to anything else. And I'm creating this sort of neo-disco vibe. And in order to do it, you know, I've got this song. And in doing this mix, I basically, you know, this mix really came together through a series of Reason 7's new features because it's got 1 million Audiomatics. So I'm putting Audiomatics everywhere. I'm also parallel processing. I'm creating groups to help my mix. I use the Spectrum EQ. This sort of brought all the new features.
Well, it's originally parallel processing, originally called New York compression, wasn't it? And that sounded very authentic, sort of chic-like.
Yeah, right.
Was that you playing guitar? Or was that one of the disco loops?
That comes from disco school. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So it's, in fact, that's the bass tracks for this are all just stock stuff out of disco school. And then, of course, you know, I couldn't help it. I had to add a little, gotta have a little vocoder in there, right?
Of course. So just to clarify, the MIDI device and the Audiomatic they come as standard. They're not like rack extensions you have to buy as extra.
So the MIDI device comes as standard. Audiomatic comes as standard with the one exception. When you install the program, it's a rack extension, so you get it through your account. So basically, if you've upgraded to Reason 7 or you've bought Reason 7, you install Reason 7, you go to your account, you download Audiomatic. It's already there in your account, free for you. It's not, you don't have to go to the store and all that stuff. But and then it installs.
Okay.
So it comes as standard. You just get it through your account rather than coming off the disk install.
Okay. And there's one other thing. You've changed the authorization process a little bit, right?
Yeah.
With Reason 7.
Right. So we had the USB ignition key ever since Record and Reason 6 had it as well.
It's like Marmite, isn't it? You love it or you hate it.
You love it or you hate it. That's probably a fair way to say it. You know, there's a lot of advantages that come from having all your licenses on a key that you can drop in your pocket and go around to your friend's studio that has Reason, and you've got all your rack extensions and all your stuff. But there are people who just say, you know what, yeah, but I've got my laptop and I want Reason on my laptop and I don't want to ever be in a situation where I broke my key, lost my key, you know, forgot my key or whatever. So we basically let you make your laptop or your computer your key. So when you get Reason, now the default is computer authorization.
Okay.
If you want the key, you can order the key, and you can then authorize if it's a laptop, you can authorize your laptop and your key, and so then you sort of have best of both worlds if you want. If you like to travel around, but you don't. But when you're on your
got
laptop,
more than one machine, yeah.
Yeah, if you've got more than one machine, right.
You live in a very tall house, and you just want to go right up to the top of the house, yeah.
Right.
And also you can license the audio,
Balance.
the balance, yeah.
Yeah. Balance has a key built into it as well, so you can, you know, if you are strapped for USB ports, you could do it that way, or if you'd like to travel around with your balance and have all your licenses on there. So we sort of have it now in a way where it's like, if you're an on-the-go guy, if you're a work-off-one computer guy, you're sort of covered.
Device. All right.
Yeah.
So obviously rack extension is a big part of the new Reason, well, 6 and 7 now. They're still coming on stream. I mean, what are we up to?
I don't know what the official number is. I know a little while ago we had, I think, our little in-office celebration when we passed the 100 mark, and it's gone on from there. So I don't know what the official number is. But yeah, they're coming on all the time. Developers are coming on all the time, and it has just sort of you know, for someone who has access to all of these rack extensions, you know, within Propellerhead.
You've got the gold card, right?
You got the gold, yeah, right, the golden ticket, right? But there are so many. It's becomes hard to even keep up with, and there's some really incredible stuff in there that has made a big difference. Just again, speaking as a musician, has made a big difference for the way that I record, the way that I mix, the sounds I use.
So I want to thank Ryan very much for coming down. I really appreciate this kind of closer look at Reason 7, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Trying to squeeze my hand out, I cut my finger. I'm not doing a Michael Jackson tribute, I've just cut my finger, so I'm sorry, I'll keep it out of the way. Anyway, thanks for watching. Bye.